Robocop is back in big, mean talking version. And interceptor driving action model. Always ready to fight crime. And rebuild to fight another day.
Book him.
From the world of Robocop.
A new illegal drug called nuke has hit the streets. Crime is rampant and the police are on strike. But one cop has crossed the picket line, Robocop. But he might have met his match with Robocop 2.
In Robocop 2, the police are on strike due to their working conditions. OCP, the evil corporation who have bought out the Detroit City Police, have also cut their salary. Robocop is just going about his business. He's not joining the picket lines. And I was wondering, because he's a robot, does he still get a pension?
Well, later on in the film, when he's had the shit kicked out of him and he's delivered back at the police station door in pieces, and he's kind of like spazzing out on the floor. Sometimes it's Peter Weller's actual face with makeup. Sometimes it's just a dodgy but charming looking animatronic effect. The corporation comes in and they're kind of like, should we just scrap them for parts? Like, this will cost millions to replace. We've already got a Robocop 2 secret project underway, even though it keeps running into stumbling blocks. So I would say he doesn't have a salary, he doesn't have a pension, and he definitely doesn't get any benefits.
The way he's out on the floor just going, "Rah!" It's not even meant to be funny. I haven't laughed that much at a scene which is also not really meant to be funny in years, and that's that scene in Terminator 2 where he's got the bomb and he's like,
Yeah.
and he like does it for ages. And then I always used to do it to Jason because he had a start. Like,
Our friend Jason.
yeah.
But I actually disagree with you that I think basically if you're you know the way like if you put a film in front of test audiences, which as we know we fucking hate, and this film actually kind of almost lampoons at one point in it when they bring in a bunch of stupid average Joe public mothers and fathers in for a product testing session. They're kind of being like, why doesn't Robocop ever save a cat from a tree? Ugh. We hate test audiences too. Obviously the makers of this film did as well. But if you've got a drama about the Holocaust, say something that's really not going to have much humour in it. And if it is, it will be a joke the characters share or a moment. It won't be something that's kind of satirical or just for the audience and underneath the surface level of the film. And if you had a test audience go see that and they were cracking up in parts, you'd be like, Jesus Christ, we're really fucked up here. Like, that is not the reaction we were going for. Whereas this film, even the moments that are supposed to be serious, like probably the only genuine human touching moment in the film. You know, Robocop's supposed to be on duty shooting the kind of criminals that immediately open fire with bazookas and hand cannons, even though Robocop kills them every time, and he must have been on the force for a couple of years at this point, but they haven't learned their lesson. But instead of that, he is showing up at his old family home and watching his wife. He's getting told off by OCP and they're saying like, you're a machine, you know, you're not human anymore, stop doing this shit. That doesn't really work, so they try the angle of like, you're just hurting her more. So Robocop goes to meet her, basically pretends he really is just like a lifeless android. He says, your husband is dead. And she walks off, and I was generally sad for her, and we never see her again in the film or the series, I don't think. But even that moment, if a test audience were laughing, I think that would be fine. Because that is what this film is. It is surface level as... Well, the first film was surface level, brilliant action, gory, wild, crazy action film with a genius level of satire underneath, but pretty thinly veiled. You know, it's not like Starship Troopers that we talked about before, where that is levels and layers to that onion. Robocop 1, it was just under the surface. You could see it pretty clearly. Like, you don't need to be a genius to work out all the hilarious adverts, which are also even more sprinkled throughout this film, are taking the piss. Robocop 2, they really just lean into it and become a ridiculous comedy in this film. So I honestly think any moment where you feel like you shouldn't be laughing, you probably should be. And, you know, don't worry about that. And that includes Robocop when he's in pieces, spazzing out on the floor.
It's a comedy. Come on, we all know it.
I guess this is quite a difficult one because obviously Robocop 1 was a mega success. It's made the studios loads of money. So the studio heads are going to be like, right, we weren't expecting this to make us so much dough. You know, it always reminds me of the Pink Floyd song, Have a Cigar, you know, like you're going to make loads of dough, boys, you know what I mean? And they're rubbing their hands together, smoking their big cigars in the boardrooms. And they're like, right, we need a second one. It's always difficult to follow such a cult classic success, and like it's hard to think of sequels that have been better than a mega success first film. Like the one that always springs to mind is Terminator 2. Like I would argue that's better than
another
Terminator.
Cameron film, Aliens.
Yeah, I would go with that. And it's kind of like whatever movie they put out for this one it's kind of a lose-lose, because there's going to be so many mega fans of Robocop 1. I do it all the time when there's like franchises or good films. Why are they doing another one? They should just leave it. There's going to be a section of the fan base who are going to be like, whatever Robocop 2 is, it just can't beat Robocop 1, so it's a poison chalice.
I do get the sentiment, because, say, like, the highs of the Alien franchise with the first couple of films, even the third one, even though I always just feel like Fincher spat in my face in the first 5 minutes when he kills off Newt in the opening couple of minutes in such an unceremonial fashion. It's just like, what the fuck? But it was still, like, a well-crafted, good film. But then after that, like, AVP 1-2... Can You See in the Dark, Covenant, whatever the fuck Prometheus was supposed to be.
Prometheus.
And even Romulus, even though that was like surface level, it was a fun film, it's just a pile of shit, really, in comparison. It's just hey, remember this bit from the films you actually liked? Hey, do you remember this iconic line? We're not going to try and write our own iconic lines for this one. We're just going to like bastardize the old ones in horrific fashion. But then you got something like The Evil Dead, which multiple films, and then 20 years later, a TV show. Everything on paper should be like, this is going to be shit, but I have watched every single second of it. I was literally watching Ash vs. The Evil Dead again last night, the TV series, and I fucking love it. I never really get that thing of, because a later one is shit, it's ruined the old one, unless they try and retrofit the story from the old one. Terminator franchise being an example. I'll take the chance to give me more. And that's what this film does, is it just gives you more Robocop. It gives you more Robocop moments. Like they couldn't even film him getting out of his car in the first one, because he literally couldn't do it in the suit. In this one, he rides a motorcycle. He's driving around on a motorcycle having shootouts. You know, he's fucking hanging off the side of a building.
Ultimate in law enforcement, Robocop and the Ultra Police, the only cops with rapid repeat cap firing.
He's unstoppable.
Robocop and the Ultra Police, each sold separately with RoboCaps.
After being worried by the fact that he keeps going to visit his wife, whilst the prototypes for Robocop 2 are all failing, OCP decides to input a whole new list of prime directives, even down to the point of you must always be polite, even if it's whilst you're shooting a bunch of criminals. You know, you see these brilliant moments where Robocop is talking to kids and saying, you should stay in school and you only hurt the ones you love.
Bad language leads to bad thoughts. It's very Demolition Man, you know, when he like swears and...
Yeah, it's almost like HR, corporate HR again. They found another way to mug off the corporate world.
Or when he's in the car and he's like spinning around, the moon looks lovely tonight.
It's just like, it's daylight.
We're in the day, Murphy. Like,
or when he's reading Miranda rights to a corpse.
Oh yeah. He's like,
I'm having trouble. Or when he's doing that cartoon Bugs Bunny, Looney Tunes, gunfire, making a silhouette out of the poor geezer smoking, where he's just like...
He does actually shoot him though, doesn't he? He gets him in the arm, I think.
Does he? I didn't even catch that.
Thank you for not smoking.
The legal bills for OCP they must have fucking lawyers on retainers working around the clock.
Well, it's like the end of the film where Robocop 2 is actually escaped and police cars are blowing up. There's like 30, 40 police officers been shot and killed. Overlooking it from his high tower balcony is the old man. Literally just called the old man. That's not us being lazy, not remembering his character name. With Johnson, his little lackey, he's just his bitch, man. He's just like, he is an Ian Bill character if you are from the UK. He just turns to him and says, get our best spin team on this. We're going to get terrible coverage in the news.
No, the actual line is, who's living, who's dead? And they're like, oh, the dead won't cause us any problems, sir. And he goes, they always have relatives.
And he says it just like, if you leave food out, there'll always be rats.
Obviously, I have a PlayStation. As part of my membership, you get like 3 monthly games, and one of them was called Robocop Rogue City. Like,
was this the one where it's like an old sort of Sega 2D game?
Yeah. No, it's 3D. Play as Robocop.
Is the ultimate boss battle a staircase?
Yeah, and then like, it's great because, you know, for example, there's a hostage situation at the courthouse where they've like taken it over, and you can like, if they run up to you close, you can like punch them and they just like in total Robocop fashion they just explode. Like it's just fantastic.
I love it. And Robocop as a franchise was a fucking cash cow. It made so much money. From the films it made a lot of money, but the merchandise, in between Robocop 1 and 2 coming out, you had so many toys. You had a cartoon series for kids, and obviously the toys.
The return of the crime-fighting cyborg in Robocop 2 has generated a new wave of enthusiasm and given rise to a flood of Robocop merchandise, including video games, action figures, clothes, and has even inspired a hit music video.
And that was the weird thing bridging into this one, because they had a product that they were able to sell to kids and also sell to adults. No in between, one's either uber violent or one's like a Disney movie. Whereas this film, to be fair to him, look, it's even more satirical and adult in terms of like the humor you can get from this film. But at the same time, there's a lot of moments where, pretty much any of the robots in this film kind of almost make cartoon sound effects. If they're confused, they're like, oh, in a robot sort of voice. If they slip on something, it's like a Bugs Bunny slipping on a banana peel kind of sound effect. They give you a great kill count in this film, but it took me until about halfway through to realize, the gore is pretty much gone though.
Yeah.
In the first film, in the boardroom, when it shoots that guy, it looks like they've got a blender inside that fake bodysuit. It is a shower of blood and guts coming out of his chest. Like, you feel it. Whereas in this film, people get blapped and machine gunned, and a lot of the time, I don't even see like a little dust effect or holes appearing in their armor or their clothing. They just kind of fall over like, with a few sparks.
Robocop and evil ED-260 face off with rapid repeat cap firing. Robocop and the Ultra Police.
It dialed up a lot of the craziest, funnest, and most unique parts of the film. But I gotta be honest, I still want gore in my Robocop film. So that was really missing from this one.
Detroit, even now, has a reputation for not being the safest city in the world. Maybe that's why they chose it as Detroit. Who knows? It definitely is. Of course, with the police being on strike, it's even worse. Like, everyone's just going around robbing, looting, as you would.
What's bugging you, Murph? Cain. Cain's bugging me.
Kane, who's a great villain, by the way, is kind of controlling the city, the supply of nuke, which is basically, I can work out like some sort of liquid, addictive crack, cocaine, heroin type of drug. And it's even infiltrated the Detroit City Police Department because Duffy, the police officer, little rat.
Big fatso.
Yeah. Do you know what? The rats are always like fatty and sweaty and...
skinny, like maybe Steve Buscemi types.
Yeah, in Con Air. And he's addicted to nuke, so he's at the will of Kane's gangs where he's begging him for the nuke and he's giving him, the police patrols are going to be here. So they're infiltrated, and Robocop is obsessed with trying to get Kane. Like, Kane and Robocop are Biff and Marty McFly. They're yin to yang. Do you know what I mean? They live for trying to get the better of each other. And even in Robocop's robotic mind, he's always like, Kane, we need to find Kane.
Wash my car.
Yeah. Hey, McFly.
Well, do you know, it's funny because you're saying that, like, Kane is a really interesting villain in this. You have loads of villains in the Robocop films, and the big overarching villains tend to get away. The old man is the one that's carried over from this film, and he doesn't go into the third film. I'm guessing just because the script and the production was so awful, he was like, no, I'm done. I've done my Robocop films. But in this one, you have him, you have the young psychologist who's this ambitious little bitch, more of a minor character and a minor villain, but she's a really worthy adversary within the Robocop world because she's that classic kind of corporate, doesn't give a fuck, ruthless bitch. When they're going through their prototypes for Robocop 2, she basically sees her opportunity to try and climb the corporate ladder, starts talking to the old man, being like, oh, you know, maybe it's the mental stability of the humans you're trying to turn into these cyborgs. They can't handle it. You need a psychologist like me on board. And, you know, if that doesn't completely sell the idea, then I'll start fucking you, as we see later on in the film. And she's kind of got a little enemy rivalry going on with Johnson, who's his, you know, his little lackey bitch. But she eventually settles on, we should be looking at criminals. And she settles on Cain, because Cain is a really interesting villain. Isn't just like your typical gang leader from the first film where he's like, I'm in it for money, I'm ruthless, I'll kill anyone, I'll sell drugs to kids, I'll get the whole city hooked on nuke. He is almost as much a cult leader as he is a gangster. An anarchist, you know, thinks chaos is good, disorder is good, that's what humans need. Like, he's nuts and he's a piece of shit. And they try and sell that to you as he kills some innocent Chinese woman early on in the film. And later on, when he's killing Duffy, the policeman, because they realised he ratted him out, he forces his little kid gang member, who I fucking hate as a character, to watch as they kill him. So they're really trying to sell you that he's evil. But he's also interesting because he talks about how he wants to get a real lab and real scientists so he can start making different variations of nuke. You know, he wants there to be a nuke for every feeling. You know, if you're feeling sad, here's one that's going to make you happy. If you're feeling bored, here's one that's going to make you exhilarated about every little small detail. You know, he's crazy, but he's righteous with it, his point of view, and he seems to really genuinely believe it. And he's got that kind of maverick supervillain attitude about things where he does things that even his own gang are kind of like, what the fuck? You didn't tell us you were going to do that. But they're all in his orbit around his aura.
Yeah, I mean, like, if nuke wasn't such a terrible drug, it was like paracetamol or ibuprofen, some sort of medication to take, like an antidepressant, you'd be like, what a great guy. Do you know what I mean? He's trying to help everyone.
Well, to be honest, even nuke, like the way he was selling nuke, it sounded pretty good.
Exactly.
If it wasn't for the addiction part, if they had a steady supply, then fuck it.
They're all living in like some absolute shithole. Detroit looks terrible in this film. Like, it looks like an absolute cesspool, which it is. Why not have this drug to escape from it for a while?
Well, it's funny because you get the same sales pitch from Hob, the little annoying kid gang member who I every time I watch this, I'm kind of like, maybe I'll enjoy it this time for what it is, and I just always hate. I'm just like, why did you put a little kid gangster in this? It just makes it ridiculous. It's like there's some film a while back where everyone was talking in the first hour in quiet whispers about this scary gangster boss who's running everything, and then it turns out it's Dinklage, that dwarf from Game of Thrones. And you're just like, you just ruined it. Like, no offense to dwarfs, but you're not gonna become a mob boss because people will just hold you at arm's length and kick you in the balls. But the little kid who's part of his gang / cult meets with the mayor, and the mayor is just such a great character.
My favourite character.
He's so spineless, and he is like your typical cartoon politician, where all the worst attributes of politicians when they're being phony with the press is dialed up to 11. But he does seem to want to save the city. He is against OCP. Maybe it's just because they're the bigger power, so you know, he wants to actually be mayor, not just ceremonial mayor who goes hat in hand to OCP, because OCP, as we know, are once again trying to privatize the city, and the mayor is about to default on their loan from OCP. So once that happens, he'll be able to knock down all the neighborhoods and all the squalor and wash it all out and build his nice big modern skyscrapers and project developments. So the mayor's desperate, so he goes over and meets with the gangsters, and this little kid's giving them the sales pitch, basically to kind of make him feel better about what he's doing, saying, listen, we'll give you the money. You need 37 million? No worries, we'll give you 50 just to be sure. Stop the war on drugs. You need business in the city. Think about how many jobs we provide. We make everyone happy, you know. You could be the mayor that cleaned up Detroit. And you see him kind of like allowing himself to be convinced by it. But again, it's that whole thing of this isn't just a gang. Kane's gang are, at least he himself is, and a lot of his followers are ideological about it. And it's all elevated by the fact that it's played by Tom Noonan, you know, absolute fucking legend. Manhunter. Do you see? Like, absolute fucking legend.
Dude, every time you say that, I just can't get over the South Park.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Do you see?
Where he's showing him his boring holiday photos.
Yeah,
he's like, nah, stop.
He's like in the chair. Yeah, I like the mayor. As you said, I agree with you, he's weak. But I genuinely think with Robocop and Robocop's partner, they're the only actual good people. I mean, Robocop's programmed to be good in some parts of the film.
Yeah, he's not just programmed to be good. He is good. That's why he works. They say that again and again because Murphy was such a good person and a good cop.
But I do think the mayor generally wants to save the city, like, you know, like back in the 80s where they'd like do those phones in, like, we're on 3 million now, you know, and like,
oh, the Jerry Lewis telephones.
yeah, he's playing the violin upside down and shit. And, you know, I genuinely think he wants the best for Detroit and the poor people in it, because later on he tries to stop them with their skyscrapers, even when the old man's saying, why are you going against this? Everyone will have a fresh home, you know, and you could tell that he's kind of like lying, you know.
Yeah, they ain't gonna afford shit.
He reminds me of that classic Simpsons episode, Monorail.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I like him, and he just and his character just has that touch of humour.
It's so over the top, and before anything had even been said, he's like popping his eyes out and pulling his neck collar, being like, oh, I'm sweating in here, and dabbing his forehead. So I was saying Kane's a great character, and he is, and I know he needs to turn into the giant Robocop 2 mecha thing, but I'm always kind of sad that you lose Todd Noonan from the film because he's so fun to watch. And once he gets into that shootout with Robocop and he's on life support, and that evil psychologist woman comes in and she's like, oh, you know, we need to take his brain quick before he flatlines. And she sticks it into the giant new Robo, which is kind of like a big cyberpunk. And he's got no face except for this like early CGI robot interface.
Terrible.
It looks terrible, but it's great. Like, I loved it.
Awful.
You hate the effects in this. I love the effects. Whenever you got him walking for a prolonged bit, you have a close-up of his feet, and you're like, okay, that's a real life-sized pair of feet. And then anytime he's in a full shot, it's clearly stop motion. But, you know, I loved it in the first film. I love it in this film. And I love it when Robocop's in a close-up and it's clearly Weller with his jawline that you can recognize. And then it cuts to a full shot of them fighting, and the stop-motion Robocop 2 is swinging him around by the legs and smashing him against beams.
There are 9 shooting crews creating shots for the picture to create the illusion of this giant monster. So an average shooting crew might be able to do 1 to 1.5 shots a week, and those shots are 2 to 3 seconds in duration.
I mean, it's probably deliberately done to like feed into the satirical element of the film.
No, I mean, this was pre-CGI. Yeah. This was like, what else could they do?
I mean, like things that I'd pick out, which like genuinely made me laugh, was, you know, Robocop's face when he's spazzing out scene. The scene where Robocop 2 and Robocop are fighting on a skyscraper, and you can see the buildings around the models, and like,
you're going down,
you're
Kane.
Coming with me. Even when they have pulled out Kane's spinal cord and it's like just sitting in like a tube, and the eyes are just like, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, I laugh at it, but sometimes, you know, you've seen so many newer films and effects and stuff have advanced so much. When you go back to watch like one of these old films, I always find it a bit difficult, but you got to take it as it is. This film was made when it is, and I'm struggling with the effects, but yeah, it's funny. It didn't take me out of it. Do you know what I mean?
If it was a film that you were meant to be taken more seriously, it definitely would.
Yeah.
Like, the 80s was a weird era for special effects because it was kind of almost like the absolute peak of practical effects, but you didn't have CGI yet, except for really early, like The Last Starfighter, basically first of its kind awful looking CGI. But you couldn't make these action scenes and not go to a big wide shot and have them actually fighting. It couldn't just all be close-ups of a big robot mechanized suit turning. It's the same way in Jurassic Park 1. The animatronics are maybe some of the best ever made. Definitely the best ever made at the time. But if you only use those, you could never have the T-Rex chasing those little gazelle-like mini dinosaurs across the valley in a big wide shot. You know, you need that mix of it. And it's the same in this. Like, they needed to go to them wide shots at times. But they didn't have CGI. They couldn't actually build a giant robot suit that would do it. Or maybe they could. I mean, Pumpkinhead did an amazing full-size suit that you could see in real time. And I think I wish they did more stuff like that. But, you know, what were they meant to do? It was kind of like World War One was that war where modern warfare met classical warfare, where the first tanks were rolling onto the battlefields as they were still dressing up all in red, and your side dress up all in blue, and we'll just send a wave of men, and if we bring more meat to the battle, maybe we'll win.
They'd ride in on horses with swords against the tank.
and machine gun fire.
But I didn't. I see Phil. I'm sure I saw Phil Tippett's name in the.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In the credits, and he was like a guru of practical effects. Am I right on
stop
that?
motion specifically. In the 80s, he got the biggest budgets he ever got to work on and got to make some of his best work. So at least he went out on a high.
Unlike two-dimensional animation, where you have this series of cells, we're working with a three-dimensional model that is positioned and repositioned sequentially over numerous single frames of film.
We have 8 stop-motion puppets. Each one must have 150 moving parts on it, and each of those are very finely machined by one of the animators, in addition to one full-size Kane prop, Kane monster prop that was built from the waist up. That would allow us to get shots with Peter Weller in the Robocop outfit in contact with this robot.
And I just want to go back to what you said about you knew Kane had to go into this giant Robocop 2. I'm totally with you on that. I didn't check out the second half of the film, but I was kind of annoyed. Like I actually preferred Kane as a human villain. It was annoying to me. Could they not have found someone else to go in there? Like, I know Kane's the main villain, but could they have done it where they find someone else to go in the big Robocop 2, but then Kane's doing his thing and they all come together at the end, Reservoir Dogs style, where it's a Mexican standoff again? That would have been good. More Kane, less Robocop 2, man. And just to clarify, I know Kane is in the machine, but I'm sorry, I don't count the couple scenes where his face is all mumbled up and spinning around like a Lilac Wars kind of head Andros. So yeah, I don't know, like, for me, the first half of the film was a bit better when he was Robocop fighting the Kane that we all know and love as human form. That was the best parts for me personally.
Well, it's also got all the segments in the first half when Robocop is battling his new prime directives and he's, being all polite. Like, some of the funniest moments are in the first half. But it's a weird one because I do know what you mean, where, in keeping with the first film, Robocop's main villains are human, corporate kind of evil. And he's still got that with the old man and the OCP in this film, but he's also battling with this gangster character in Cain. Kane's bugging me. And it's a great little rivalry, and Kane's an interesting character, like I said. He had the evil human corporate characters in the first one, but he also had a big robot thing to battle.
True.
So the natural evolution of that is to have an even bigger robot thing to battle. A bigger, stronger, more warlike, less human version of Robocop in the form of Robocop 2 with Kane's brain inside him. But then you also got to think Robocop had become a merchandise machine at this point. And, you can only sell so many Robocop models and different guns and obviously the big robot thing he battled in the first film, but you need some new toys to sell.
True.
So,
True.
Like, by the third film, they were throwing in, like, Robocop has a flying thing and he drives a pimp car at one point, and he's just, they just were packing it in to try and sell toys. So they needed a new model. They need a new cool thing that kids are going to want for Christmas. And I do think it makes more sense, because if we didn't have Kane, who's also addicted to his own drug invention nuke, if it wasn't Kane's drug addicted brain going into Robocop 2, then we wouldn't have got a junky cyborg robot that is battling him. Because the big way in which they finally, after their big battle, Robocop turns the tables on Robocop 2 is by using his drug addiction against him. And he's even got a little chest panel that opens up where they can put the nuke drug big test tube thing into. And it's just having a drug addicted junkie giant cyborg robot is just fucking hilarious. Like, you can't pass up that.
You've killed the poor geezer, and then, like, he wasn't even dead. You cut off his life support to cut him up and take out his brain. Just fucking send the poor geezer to the Priory. Give him some rehab. Get him off the drugs, man. Send him to Betty Ford. Like, let him reform himself.
And I know she justified it in certain scenes, but I do kind of wonder why the psychologist decided crazy criminals would make more sense. I love the scenes with her and that little scientist guy who's like Dr. Frank from The Simpsons. He's just running around and, like, his lab coat's always askew and his glasses are getting steamed up and he's flapping his arms.
I guess for the purpose of the film, you can't put in, like, a suit that goes to work 9 to 5 into the robot, because they'd be like, I don't want to shoot these people. You know, like, it would just do nothing. So you have to put something deranged into it.
They'd also kind of be a pussy and not be able to handle. Like, Murphy is the perfect thing because he is hard as nails, very brave, but also a genuine good man, which is a rare combination, because most of the time when people are good, it's really just like they're kind of a pussy, maybe avoid confrontation, or when they're tough, they're maybe a bit of a bully when they can. Maybe even they're nice sometimes, but they just, in little moments, they can do it. But Murphy is almost a flawless character, almost a boring character in that sense. But yeah, like I said, they use his drug addiction to get the better of Cain. He finally takes him out, rips his spinal cord with his brain still attached, smashes it into the ground, punches it into mush just for good measure, as you see the little terrible early CGI Tom Noonan interface finally go to black. And Robocop has saved the day. Cue the fucking music score and credits.
And he also rips it out, but for some reason when he rips it out from a robot, Kane is still going. And then he has to, you know, do a classic The Rock WWE people's elbow into it. To
off the high rope.
Yeah, and then obviously, like, you have the extra thing of, okay, he's removed the sentient being from it, but the shell of the robot's still there. So we have the extra scene of the giant robot is falling and you're like, oh no, Robocop's on the floor surrounded by crushed up brains, and he just kind of like moves to the side and the thing misses him. And then like the next scene, before you even say cut to the credits of the music, for some reason he's just got like some wrench and he's just like, he's just spinning it within himself, and his partner comes along and says something. He goes, oh well, we're only human. And then the film just ends.
I love that. Yeah, he's just fixing himself up. And it's like, he's obviously, because he's had his big fight of Cain where they've fallen off a skyscraper, smashed through into the sewers, huge explosions. Like when he's in the rubble of their massive hole in the floor that they've created from two giant robots falling from such a height, he's got one tiny dent in his chest and a couple of pebbles like and dust on him. And when he stands up, his back that he's actually fallen onto is spotless.
Yeah, that made no sense.
And it won't even run down your battery.
So, like, I think we have, like, 2 or 3 adverts in this. I know I keep going back to the game, but I love it. You get them in the game, whereas you don't actually have cutaways because it's a first-person shooter. And then there's, like, little radios littered about, and they have the adverts on it, and it's like, OCP organ donation. Are you low on cash this month? Come and donate your liver. And it's just so funny. I really liked... In fact, I think it was a good idea. You know, the first advert we see right at the start of the film where they're being carjacked, when he goes to start the engine, it electric shocks him. I was thinking...
He won't be back.
Yeah. And then he just, like, he opens the door and he, like, just drops out. That's actually a good idea. Like, if someone brought it onto Dragon's Den, they're like, you know, they got a PowerPoint with one of those little pointers. Forget car alarms. This one's a shocker.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Leave your car open. Let them get inside. There was actually, I remember reading in the Guinness Book of Records, there was a invention that was considered the most deadly car security, or maybe even security system ever invented. And it was basically, if your car's getting jacked, flamethrowers turn on underneath and shoot either side, which I don't know what countries it went on the market, but it was invented and intended to be a real product.
Yeah, I can't remember the actual film. There's a James Bond film. What's the one where it's like the guys, it's set in a newspaper?
Stinks.
Or Tomorrow Never Dies.
Tomorrow Never Dies, yeah.
I think he has a car and he has it parked in a car park, and they go to like get into it, shocks them and shit. It reminded me of that. The one that I like the most, actually, out of all the adverts is the suntan lotion.
Yeah.
One, where she's around.
This will cause cancer.
Yeah. And do you know what? I've been to America, and it's actually like they do have, you know, they'll be going around the supermarket and they'll be walking towards the camera and it's like, take this medication. And then for the last 10 seconds of the advert is side effects. And it's all going like really quickly. Like.
The best is the billboards in America where every time you're driving down the highway, it'll be like some chick in a suit jacket with her hands on her hips looking all sassy, being like, did you have a fall? And that wasn't your fault? Call Kathy Burke and she will fucking kick ass. Yeah, the adverts are so brilliant. And also the news segments where they cut to the news and they're saying, oh, there's been a nuclear reactor has exploded in the Amazon rainforest. They're saying it's going to be a environmental disaster. And the news anchor woman's like, well, don't they always say that? Yeah. Anyway, in other news, here's a dog riding a skateboard. It fleshes out the world and does world building for this universe, but it's just such a great way to punctuate things, like sometimes in films, it's handy to have a narrative device like that to maybe provide some info, but also just to break the film up. So you're not always cutting directly to the same characters. Like the Warriors, you only ever see the radio girl's lips as she's speaking into the mic, but that kind of just sprinkles in, punctuating, breaking up the film. Battle Royale, you have the moments where you have the evil old teacher guy who's now working for the government reading out through the megaphone who's died in the previous day. And those are good moments, but in this, it's just brilliant. Like cutting to those adverts or the news segments just remind you of the film you're in and provides more insight. And they're essentially like sketches, but it makes perfect sense. It doesn't feel like they're just dropped in there in a weird way. It plays perfectly into the film.
I will say, I don't think anything beats Robocop, the original. I will say that. I think that will be an opinion held by most people. As I said earlier, to follow up Robocop with a sequel is always going to be a difficult challenge. When we do the reviews, I always like to go back and see what the critics said about the film. And you go on Roger Ebert and he's saying this is a pile of trash. Even Empire, I think, gave it 1 star off the top of my head. What? Saying what is the need to be fair, we've said it ourselves. What is the need to have that kid in it? The ultra violent kid. It's just putting shock value in for having shock value, which I actually agree with.
A terrible touching moment when he's dying where you're just like, mate, fucking just let the kid die so we can move on.
Just holds his finger and he's like, I will call for medical support. But I don't think it's as bad as they're saying it is. I think it's a middle ground film. I would personally give it a 3 out of 5. It's a perfectly reasonable watch. It has some great moments. It has the humour that honours the first film, that honours Verhoeven's satirical takes on stuff. Tom Noonan's brilliant in it. I do think the second half's a bit weaker when we lose the human form of Cain into the Robocop 2. But as you said, they need to up the ante and
sell some toys.
Yeah, sell some toys, Declan. I'll say if you're a fan of Robocop 1, it's definitely worth watching Robocop 2. And if we compare Robocop 2 to what happened in Robocop 3, it's actually night and day. If you're a fan of the first film, I would definitely give it a watch. It's worth it. Do not go and Google reviews of it because you'll read it and be like, oh, what they're saying is this is a pile of shit. I'm not going to bother with that. Don't listen to that. Make your own opinion of it and watch it. I think it's worth a watch, but I don't think it's as good as Robocop 1. And that's not cussing it because Robocop 1 is the gold standard, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Because Robocop 1, Verhoeven created a model of this crazy gory action film with a really fun satirical component to it. At least you can see the filmmakers and the producers understood that. They didn't miss the mark. They didn't miss the satire. If anything, they ramped it up in this film. They also ramped up the comedy, so you got to go in just understanding, okay, there's literally going to be Looney Tunes sound effects at times when a robot falls over, say, or gets confused. But it's not like it was a super serious film in the first one, like you didn't have to take it so seriously, so it's not a giant departure. The gore is turned down, which I wasn't a fan of, but the kill count is still very good. It's still brutal. It's still sarcastic and cutting and brilliant. The characters are still complete pieces of shit. You get Tom Noonan playing a more interesting and somewhat unique kind of villain for these sort of films. You get a giant evil Robocop 2 prototype, and even better than him is the failed prototype robots. Like that sequence alone is worth watching this film for. The first one comes out and starts shooting people and then shoots himself in the head. The second one comes out with a really basic kind of happy looking robot face and then has a mental breakdown and pulls it off, and there's this screaming skeleton underneath like a Ray Harryhausen film. It's just fucking great. And if that doesn't sell you on it, you get to see Robocop riding a motorcycle. So it's not as good as Robocop 1, but it's more of the same. And even that as a standard is enough for me to go watch this film and recommend it. So that is an easy recommendation for Robocop 2.
Out of control. He said, I ain't got money, I ain't got fame, but after tonight,